Those born before 1986 can leave now.
Factories now only want workers born in the 90s or later. If you're over 30, there's no place for you anymore. The employment landscape in 2024 is grim. In China, being 33 years old, typically considered the prime of life, means being seen as too old for even factory jobs. As low-wage migrant workers leave the cities, they are being replaced by a growing number of underpaid college graduates. Employers are able to hire these graduates for as little as 2 or 3,000 yuan a month. Despite their higher education, many young people are now taking jobs they once dismissed, earning meager wages and seeing little hope for the future. This summer, 11.8 million college graduates enter the job market, competing with older workers for a shrinking number of positions. Many workers born in the 80s and 90s, now in their early 40s at most, are being squeezed out of the workforce. At a time when they are financially supporting both their aging parents and young children, they find there is little room left for them in the job market. They've been replaced by cheaper younger workers, or even by AI. This shift affects everyone, from formerly well-paid tech professionals to delivery drivers and security guards, with younger people increasingly taking over these roles. I've been hit hard, really hard by reality. I'm 35, a graduate with a master's degree from a prestigious 985 university. Yet I can't even pay off my 20,000 yuan monthly mortgage. Right now, I can't even come up with 1,000 yuan. It's incredibly tough. Back when I was working, I used to make 35,000 yuan a month, and my wife made around 12,000. Together with bonuses, we were bringing in over 50,000 yuan a month. Paying off a 20,000 yuan mortgage felt easy, no pressure at all. But then reality hit us out of nowhere. Now, both my wife and I are unemployed. Last December, I faced pay cuts and layoffs. I never thought I, an AI project director, who worked at the company for 5 years, would be laid off. Honestly, I never imagined this, not even in my wildest dreams. My colleagues are also struggling to find jobs. They say it's hard because of their age, but I'm only 35. Is that really too old? To keep up with our mortgage, we've borrowed over 100,000 yuan from relatives and friends, and living expenses just keep going up. We bought our home for 5.5 million yuan, and with renovations, interest, and taxes, the total came out to about 6 million. But now, this house is only worth maybe 4 million on the market, and it's hard to even sell. That's the reality we're dealing with right now. The rising youth unemployment rate in China has given rise to a new social class known as the unfinished generation. This internet buzzword, inspired by the widespread phenomenon of unfinished buildings, refers to the many young people who, despite holding university degrees, are unable to secure employment. Like these incomplete structures, their lives have come to a standstill. Some are forced to take low-paying jobs, while others confront the harsh reality of prolonged unemployment. A business owner said, "There are no jobs available, so where can college graduates go? We used to have 1,000 positions available each year, but now we only need 100. Who am I going to hire? Of course, I'll hire the best candidates. But what happens to the average college graduate? What about vocational school graduates?" Vocational graduates could lower their salary expectations. For example, if you're asking for 10,000 yuan and it's hard to find a job, why not settle for 6,000 yuan? You're missing my point. When I graduated, there were about 10 million jobs, enough to accommodate 10 million college graduates. Those with higher degrees, better skills, and a willingness to work hard could find better jobs. Back then, I landed a job at Procter & Gamble with an 8,000 yuan salary, which was the highest in my school. Most graduates were making around 6,000, but some earned as little as 2,000. The point is, everyone had a job because there were positions available. I still think there are plenty of jobs out there. You don't really understand. Our biggest problem is that we only see things from our own perspective. When companies are shutting down, who's hiring? Just check the job sites. You'll see how many highly qualified people, even those who studied abroad, are applying for jobs that pay us just over 10,000 yuan. The real issue is that the number of available positions has shrunk dramatically. It's much harder for young people to find jobs today. On September 20th, China's National Bureau of Statistics released unemployment data for August, categorized by age group. The unemployment rate for the labor force aged 16 to 24, excluding students, rose to 18.8%, a 1.7 percentage point increase from July. However, analysts note that this figure does not account for millions of unemployed young people in rural areas who are left out of the official statistics. Even for college graduates, many are forced to take jobs far below their qualifications, such as security guards, delivery drivers, or janitors. Sociologists estimate that around 25% of Chinese college graduates, aged 23 to 35, are currently working in jobs that do not match their educational background. According to a report by Taiwan's Central News Agency on September 21st, Nanjing University of Aeronautics and Astronautics Suzhou Affiliated School announced on September 14th that it had hired a temporary janitor, Mr. Li, after a thorough selection process. This process included the review of applications, internal interviews, and multiple committee evaluations. The announcement revealed that Mr. Li, born in March 2000, is 24 years old and holds a master's degree in physics. A master's graduate in physics applying for a temporary janitorial position reflects the unfortunate reality that many Chinese college graduates face today. Although the school later clarified that Li, the applicant, had not yet obtained his master's degree and was only a bachelor's graduate at the time of applying, the situation still sparked widespread commentary online. Graduating with a bachelor's degree just to become a janitor, what's the point of all those years of studying? One person asked. Another remarked, master's and PhD degrees are becoming less and less valuable. It's not even surprising anymore to see PhD holders doing menial jobs. As 2024 progresses, China's economy has not seen any miraculous recovery. In fact, it continues to weaken. Alongside the collapse of many small and medium-sized enterprises and brick-and-mortar stores, the ongoing exit of foreign investment has intensified the wave of unemployment. The deteriorating political and security environment in China has also accelerated the withdrawal of American and Japanese companies in recent months. In late August, the US tech giant IBM announced the closure of its research facilities in Beijing, Shanghai, and Dalian, affecting about 1,600 Chinese employees. On the same day, Taiwan's famous restaurant chain Din Tai Fung, known for its dim sum, announced it will close 14 of its branches in northern China by the end of October. These closures include major locations in central Beijing, such as Gumao, Xidang, and Wangfujing, leaving around 800 employees out of work. IBM, which has operated in China for 40 years, and Din Tai Fung, which has been around for 20 years, are now pulling out after years of painstaking efforts to establish themselves in the market. Their decision to leave signals a pessimistic outlook on the future of China's economy. The departure of foreign companies from China is not a recent development, but the pace seems to be accelerating. At the beginning of the year, HP shut down its Shanghai office. In the latter half of last year, American research firm Gallup, global assessment management firm Vanguard, and Japan's Mitsubishi Motors also announced their exit from China. Prior to this, major US tech companies like Apple, Microsoft, Google, and Dell had already shifted production lines out of China. Citigroup also revealed plans to gradually wind down its consumer banking operations in the country. As of now, about 100 Japanese companies have withdrawn from China, with German, British, and even some Chinese companies following suit by relocating their businesses or supply chains elsewhere. According to data released by China State Council, foreign enterprises in China employ 45 million people. When accounting for the related industries, foreign companies have created over 100 million jobs. Meanwhile, within China, the first half of the year saw over 3 million small businesses shut down and 460,000 restaurants go out of business. The wave of layoffs has even reached government departments, once seen as iron rice bowl jobs. Last year, Beijing announced a 5% reduction in staffing across central government agencies. Official reports and news sources indicate that earlier this year, Henan Province cut 5,600 positions, while Shandong Province has eliminated nearly 10,000 jobs since 2022. Media reports suggest that nearly 200 million people in China are now relying on gig work to make a living. China's 80s and 90s generations are currently experiencing a painful wave of job losses, similar to what their parents endured in the past. The 1990s remain a painful memory for that generation, as the fear of losing their jobs casts a shadow over the entire decade, lingering into the early 21st century. From 1995 to 2002, during a period of state-owned enterprise reform, the Chinese Communist Party abruptly laid off over 60 million workers without providing any safety nets. Many people lost their livelihoods overnight in what became known as the 90s wave of layoffs. In December 2001, China officially joined the WTO, marking the beginning of a period of rapid economic growth. According to a 2021 BBC Chinese report, over the past 20 years, China's GDP grew eightfold, making it the world's second largest economy. Its share of the global economy rose from 4% in 2001 to 17.4% in 2020, and exports increased more than sevenfold, positioning China as the world's top goods trading nation. Additionally, China remained the top destination for foreign investment among developing countries. However, this boom came with significant downsides, such as high pollution, low labor protections, and inefficient investments. Despite these issues, China's financial reserves grew, and the government began to see itself as a rival to the West, leading to increasingly strained relations. These tensions escalated further after Xi Jinping took office. In recent years, rising geopolitical tensions, currency fluctuations, trade restrictions, and pandemic lockdowns have brought increasing focus to the security of international supply chains. It is expected that the remaining foreign companies will eventually leave China, leading to even higher unemployment rates. Some argue that today's unemployment situation differs significantly from the layoffs of the 1990s. Back then, it was mainly workers from state-owned enterprises who were affected, but now the unemployment comes from all sectors, across various age groups and education levels. Even younger people with better educational backgrounds are not spared from layoffs. The post-layoffs opportunities are also different now. After the painful layoffs of the 1990s, China's entry into the WTO brought new opportunities. Foreign and private enterprises absorbed much of the displaced labor force, and as state-owned enterprises retreated, China's economy began to rise again. Today, however, job losses represent a step backward. The government's economic policies have slowed industrial upgrades, supply chains are shifting out of China, state monopolies are expanding, and private enterprises are declining. As state-owned enterprises advance and the private sector retreats, China's economy is weakening and appears to be heading back towards a downturn. In reality, the foreign companies leaving China aren't just taking millions of jobs with them, including those from related supply chains, but also significant investments. According to China's State Administration of Foreign Exchange, China recorded a negative foreign direct investment, or FDI, figure of $14.8 billion in the second quarter of this year. Last year, in the third quarter, FDI growth turned negative for the first time at $12.1 billion, a major shock to Chinese authorities. It marked the first time since FDI tracking began in 1998 that China saw a negative FDI quarter. This year's second quarter decline was even larger than last year's. Many Chinese have been influenced by the CCP's overconfidence and anti-foreign education, believing that foreign capital only accounts for 2% of the Chinese market and is therefore insignificant. This 2% contributes to 1/10 of urban employment, 1/6 of tax revenue, 1/3 of industrial profits, 2/5 of total imports and exports, and 1/5 of research and development. Notably, foreign enterprises have been a critical driving force behind China's export growth. Since 1998, foreign companies have consistently accounted for about 45% of China's total exports, with that figure reaching around 60% between 2003 and 2010. According to the General Administration of Customs, in 2019, 57 out of the top 100 exporting companies in China were foreign enterprises, while 30 were private firms and 13 were state-owned enterprises. The stock market tells a similar story. According to the Financial Times, after foreign investors withdrew $10.9 billion from China's stock market in the third quarter of last year, the exodus has continued this year. Data shows that since the beginning of June, more than $12 billion of foreign capital has flown out of China's stock market. In response to the continued capital outflow, China's stock exchanges stopped publishing daily global capital flow statistics starting on August 18th. Economic development relies on three main pillars: investment, exports, and consumption, along with favorable talent and policy conditions. With investment and consumption dwindling, only exports remain, and even they are struggling. As the last of the foreign companies leave China, the country seems to be inching closer to total isolation. Media reports suggest that China's export growth is slowing as global demand weakens and trade barriers rise. Following the United States, the European Union and Canada have announced tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles. Canada, in particular, raised tariffs by 100%. In Asia, India's steel industry is pushing for higher tariffs on steel imports, including those from China, while Malaysia has launched an anti-dumping investigation into Chinese and Indonesian plastic products. For years, China has flooded global markets with low-cost electric vehicles, steel, and other overproduced goods. A recent study by Oxford Economics indicates that the peak of China's export momentum may have passed, warning that China's price advantage is fading as tariffs take effect. If exports continue to falter, China may find itself relinquishing all the benefits gained since joining the WTO, essentially returning to the economic conditions of the 1990s. China's economy is facing unprecedented challenges. Data shows that over 85% of the population earns less than 50,000 yuan annually. Behind this figure lies the harsh reality of countless families struggling to make ends meet. As wallets grow thinner, the pressure of daily life continues to mount. The situation is further exacerbated by the rising number of business closures and the shutdown of small individual enterprises. Each collapsed company represents a group of unemployed workers and a series of families plunged into financial hardship. Even more alarming is that nearly 800 million people are burdened with debt, more than half the country's total population. This raises the question, what kind of society forces so many people to struggle under the weight of debt? At the same time, 23 million people are unemployed, not counting the more than 10 million new graduates entering the job market each year. For these young people, finding a job has become increasingly difficult. What once seemed like a promising future now feels more like an unattainable dream. Today, many may still be working hard, but tomorrow they could be facing unemployment and debt. This sobering reality leaves much to reflect on and fills many with a deep sense of helplessness. Analysts argue that recent economic policies led by the CCP are brewing a crisis. Regulatory crackdowns on the financial, tech, and education sectors, along with the aggressive control over private enterprises and the shift towards policies favoring so-called new productive forces, are hitting the job market hard and leading to a broader societal crisis. For much of the 21st century, finance, consumer technology, and real estate industries have been key drivers of China's economic growth. As of 2022, the financial sector alone employed nearly 8 million people, offering high salaries. But these industries are now falling out of favor, facing layoffs and pay cuts. The CCP leadership is redirecting resources into sectors like electric vehicles and chip manufacturing, with a new emphasis on high quality rather than high speed development. Experts suggest that the growing disillusionment among China's highly educated workforce may further darken the outlook for the Chinese economy. China's middle class, once the best educated and highest earning group of white-collar professionals, played a vital role in boosting consumption in real estate, automobiles, luxury goods, and upscale dining. This same middle class has been decimated by the collapse of the real estate market, becoming the most unfortunate victims of the CCP's economic policies. A nation that fails to value talent and disregards economic principles cannot sustain long-term growth. In recent years, as China's real estate market overheated, local governments across the country introduced property purchasing restrictions using homeownership as a lure to attract talent. In most countries, talent recruitment aims to drive national or urban development. In China, the government's talent recruitment efforts were primarily geared towards selling properties. When the real estate market collapsed, these recruited talents became collateral damage. Take Henan, for example. In 2022, China's real estate bubble burst, and Henan was no exception. By 2023, commercial housing sales in Henan plummeted by a staggering 47.5%, nearly halving. This collapse triggered the downfall of Hunan's largest real estate company, Jiangye, and the second largest, Zhengshan Group, leaving behind countless unfinished buildings. While these buildings remain incomplete, their mortgage payments continue. Homeowners are left trapped, unable to leave, yet unwilling to stay, ultimately joining the ranks of those protesting for their rights. Even more bizarre is the situation with dozens of local banks in Hunan, including city commercial and rural banks, which provided billions in non-standard loans to real estate developers. After these funds evaporated, the banks themselves collapsed, leaving millions of depositors unable to withdraw a single cent. Unable to retrieve their principal, depositors could only resign themselves to their losses, hoping to recover up to 500,000 yuan through China's bankruptcy law. However, Henan officials dashed even that hope with a series of baffling decisions. The government of Henan declared that these effectively bankrupt rural banks were not bankrupt. Since they hadn't officially declared bankruptcy, no compensation would be paid. As for the depositors' money, they were still left empty-handed. Any attempt to protest was met with force. This rogue behavior, some say, has been perfected by CCP leaders at all levels. As one netizen remarked, when these tactics are used against foreign companies, private business owners, and ultimately everyone in China, the country's economy won't just regress to the 1990s, it will go back to the 1950s and 60s, when people were left with nothing to eat.